We continue now at the top of Daf Bava Metzia Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 6b. On the previous summit, the Gemara had asked if we assume that when a person grabs the talis out of another person's hands, let's say we assume that's effective, and the person who grabbed it is given the talis. So the question is, what would be in a situation where the person is makdish the talis? Because there is an idea of amirasol legavoa kemisirasol lehedrit, that when you have a verbal declaration in terms of hektish, that is similar to a physical action in terms of non-hektish. And so that's why the Gemara was asking, is that the same thing as takfa? Is that the same thing as seizing the talis? Would that be the same thing if the person was makdish it? And the Gemara now brings a proof, because there was a masusa, there was a bathhouse, and two people were arguing over this bathhouse. Hayamar didihu, v'hayamar didihu. This one said it's mine, the other one said it's mine. And so one of them got up and actually was makdish the bathhouse. A very similar situation over here. Instead of seizing the bathhouse, here we have a case where it was makdish it. And it says that Parshimina, Rav Chananya, Rav Oshia, V'kulu Rabbanan. Rav Chananya and Rav Oshia and all of the Rabbanan, they all separated from this bathhouse. They all were concerned that maybe it actually is hektish. V'yamalei Rav Oshia l'Rab. And then Rav Oshia said to Rabba, Ki azlas kami de Rav Chisda l'Kifri. When you go in front of Rav Chisda in Kifri, that was the name of a place, boy minei, ask him a question, meaning ask him this question, what's the halacha in this case? Ki yasa l'Sura, when he came to Sura, Amar le Rav Hamnuna, so Rav Hamnuna said he was on his way to Kifri, he came to Sura, and Rav Hamnuna said the answer to this question is mas nisanhi. The answer to this question is found in a Mishnah. It says if you have a safek bechoro, so let's say you have a situation where you have either an animal, a person, you don't know if it's a bechor. Echad bechor adam v'echad bechor behema, whether we're talking about a bechor, firstborn of a person, or whether it's a bechor behema, bein tahor and bein tameim. When you're talking about animals, you could have kosher animals that are bechor, you could have non-kosher animals like a chamor that has halachas of bechor. In all of these situations, the halacha is hamotzi mechaver olav harayah. If somebody's trying to get it from his friend, he has to bring evidence. Meaning a Kohen can't simply say it's a suffix, therefore I'm entitled to the bechor. Generally, the Kohen's entitled, but the Kohen's not allowed to say that because hamotzi mechaver olav harayah. We have a suffix here, whether this is a bechor. But yet, what do we say? V'tani Allah. But we learned on this. Mishnah, asurim begizav avoda. You still have to be concerned of the kedushas bechor, and it's usher to shear it, it's usher to work it, and so therefore you see that we do apply the kedusha even though it's hamotzi mechaver olav harayah. And so the Gemara therefore brings its proof. But over here, we're saying that if the Kohen were to seize it, the Kohen has to bring evidence to get it. But let's say the Kohen seizes it, we wouldn't take it away because we would apply hamotzi mechaver olav harayah in the other direction. Now the Kohen has possession to katani because it said hamotzi mechaver olav harayah. Again, we apply the rule of hamotzi mechaver olav harayah. So this is assuming the same assumption we had before, that seizing it would be effective. And yet, what are we saying? But if he doesn't seize it, asurin begizav avoda, we are saying that there's kedusha. We're saying it's forbidden to shear it. We're saying it's forbidden to work the animal, and so therefore we are applying the kedusha. So it's exactly our situation where seizing, in theory, would be effective, and then let's say it was not seized. Apparently, the kedusha would be chal, and the same thing would be true over here. In the case of this bathhouse, you have to be concerned that it is hektish. And the Gemara says back to that, Amar le Rabba said back to him, meaning to say that Rav Hamnuna was bringing this proof from the Mishnah, and Rabba responded to Rav Hamnuna and said, you can't bring a proof from this case, because kedushas bechor ka'amrit, are you trying to bring a proof from the holiness of a bechor? Liola me'melach, really I could say to you, takfu kohen motzino somiyadu, even if I were to argue that if the Kohen were to seize it, we would take it away from the Kohen, so that seizing it would not be effective, but still I could say by bechor v'afilu hachi, nevertheless asurim begizu uva'avoda, it still would be prohibited to shear it and to work it, to kedusha haba me'ela shani, because when it comes to bechor, that is a kedusha that comes automatically. Just being born as the firstborn creates that kedusha. It's not something that you're actively makdish, and so there we would say that the kedusha is more easily chal. And Rashi explains, Masusa again is a merchatz, a bathhouse, parshimina milirchutz, but they didn't want to bathe in that bathhouse because it might have the kedusha. V'yamalei Rav Oshia l'Rabba Garcina, and then Rav Oshia said to Rabba, when you go to Kifri, Shem Makam, Kifri was the name of a place, you go to Rav Chisda, ask him this question, Kiyasa l'Sura, but then when he got to Sura, Kashaya over Derech Sura Leilech l'Kufri, he was passing through Sura on the way to Kifri, so then Rav Hamnuna said the answer from the Mishnah, Safek Bechoros Kagon Behema Shiyolda Vein Yaduim Bachra Kvarim Lo. Case could be, for example, an animal gives birth, and we don't know whether there was a firstborn born previously or not. Echad b'chor adam, it could be by a man, it could be by a human rather. Kagon sheipila imo lefanav safek davar hapoter b'chor. Case by humans could be, let's say the mother had a child first, but it was a suffix whether that really was a child or a miscarriage that doesn't count. So it's a suffix whether it's something that exempts future children from being considered bechor. Suffix ruach hipila, maybe it was just the wind. V'habo achar bechor, and then the child that would come after would be a bechor. So you can have a suffix in that situation. Bein tamei Tamein, you can have non-kosher animal that's a Safek Bechor, could go in Peter Chamor, that's what's called a Peter Chamor that applies by a donkey. In all of these situations of Safek Hamotzi Mechaver, you apply the rule of Hamotzi Mechaver of a Raya. Kasal Gadaydach. Now, right now we think, it means as follows. In Biyad Yisrael Hain, if the Yisrael has the Bechor, and so the Kohen generally is entitled to a Bechor, have a Kohen Motzi Mechaver of a Raya, the Kohen becomes the Motzi. He's trying to get it from the Yisrael, he has to bring evidence. V'im talk for Kohen, now let's say the other way around, let's say the Kohen would seize it, V'shasek Yisrael v'hadr tzavach, and the Yisrael at first would be silent and then would protest. All of these cases over here of seizing it are talking about where first there is silence and then the person protests. That the Gemara established on the previous Amud, so that's exactly the case. But in any case, Havi Yisrael, Motzi Mechaver, in that case, the Kohen would have seized it and the Yisrael would be the Motzi Mechavero. But still, Asurim Begiz V'Avoda, still it's forbidden to shear the animal, to work the animal misafik, because you have a doubt, Shamek Kachim, maybe it is considered Kachim, maybe it's like Hektish. And so the Gemara then said, the Katani Hamotzi, it said over here, Hamotzi Mechavero, all of Araya, and as we said, Mashma Ben Kohen Ben Yisrael, that sounds we're talking whether about the Kohen or the Yisrael. We always apply Hamotzi Mechaver Olav Araya in both directions. And let's say it's not seized by the Kohen. Chomer Koach Hektish. Apparently, the strength of Hektish is so strong La'osram Begiz of Avodah that still the animals are also to shear and you can't work the animals. Shmami, no, you see the answer to our question. Dim Tim Solom Artak Foin Motzino Somiyado, that if you say that when you seize it, we still say that you don't take it away from the person, that the seizing is effective. So apparently Hektish and Mekudesh, apparently in that case, if you make it Hektish, it is also going to be Hektish. And then the Gemara responded, Liola Meimalach, really I could say is no proof at all from Bechor, because I could say Gabe Bechor that when it comes to Bechor, Da'afilu Tak for Kohen Motzino Somiyado, even if you were to assume that if the Kohen seized it, we would take it away from the Kohen, Mistama Bechezkas Yisrael, because we would say it's in the possession of the Yisrael, Uliolam HaKohen Kori Motzi Mechaver, and we would assume that the Kohen is always called the Motzi. He's always trying to take it away from the Yisrael, even if he seizes it. And the reason why it's forbidden to shear and to work the animal isn't because the Kohen has any strength over the animal. He can't seize it. Because then if it was related to the power the Kohen has to seize it, then you could try to answer our question of if you assume that if he seizes it, you don't take it away, then we could say a raya, we could say evidence that hektish would also be effective. That would be a proof in that case. But that has nothing to do with over here. Here the Kohen has no strength over this Bechor. Rather over here, Mishum Isser Safek Agizas Kachim Ukdusha Haba Me'ela Shani. The reason is because when you have a prohibition of a doubt that relates to shearing the Kachim, that relates to doing work on the Kachim, which is something that happens Haba Me'ela, which is something that happens on its own, that Kedusha happens automatically, that's different. Shem Bechor Hu Me'elav Kadosh. If it is a Bechor, it is automatically holy. Ve'ikol Esfuki B'Hachin, you have this doubt. Avlagabe Masusa, however, when it comes to the case of the bathhouse, De'en Kedusha Ba El Al Piv, where does the Kedusha come from? It comes from the person pronouncing the bathhouse to be hektish. Shalzeh comes from his mouth. So Eimalach Dafilim Tim Solomar Takva Ein Motzi. And so then I could say that even if you said that if he seizes it, that would be effective, we don't take it away. But hektisha below takva, but if he tries to make it hektish without seizing it, lo have a hektish, I could still argue it's not hektish. Then yochel a hektish, davar sheina b'shusa, because you can't make something hektish that is not in his possession. Here we're talking about making something hektish as opposed to bechor, which is an automatic kedusha. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Chananya le Rabba. Rav Chananya said to Rabba, Tanya de Messiah luch. We have a brisa that supports you. The brisa says, has sveikos nichnasen ledir le'asaser. If you have animals that are in doubt, this is talking about bechor, a situation of doubt whether the animal is a bechor, you bring all of those animals into the pen in terms of meiser behema. And Rashi explains, the Messiah luch, it supports you, means to say, the gabe safek bechor, what we're supporting is the following idea, that when you have a safek bechor, in takfa kohen motziin miyado, that if the kohen would seize it, we would take it away from the kohen. The point over here is that Rabba just said before that even if you say takfu kohen motzino som miyado, even if you say that when the kohen seizes it, we take it away from him, the kohen has no power over this safek bechor situation. The hamotzi mechaveru olav haraya is always on the side of Yisrael, but still we say that the kedusha, the concern of giza and vavoda, would still be a concern because it's a kedusha abba me'ela. That's what Rabba said, and we're bringing a proof to that idea that if the kohen tries to seize a safek bechor, we would take it away from him because it says has sveikos. It's talking about again safek bechor lekamon mefarish. Now later on we'll explain. We're talking about a specific case over here. Besafek pidyon peter chamor. We're talking about a suffix of Pidyon Peter Chamor. Now, normally in a case of Peter Chamor, you have a firstborn donkey, so you redeem that kiddush of that firstborn donkey onto a seh, onto a sheep, and you give that seh to the Kohen. Here you have a suffix, Pidyon Peter Chamor. So the seh, it's not really clear whether it has to be given to the Kohen. So what you do is the mafresh of tle, again, you separate this lamb, lafkui yisur, that takes the yisur off, v'hu liatzma, but the person doesn't need to give it to the Kohen. He actually can keep the tle, she'ein sarach litno l'kohen, it doesn't need to give it to the Kohen, she'amotzi mechaver l'varai, because the Kohen has to bring evidence. We don't even know that this was really a Peter Chamor. It was a suffix, Peter Chamor, so he keeps it. We apply the rule of hamotzi mechaver olavaraya. Upidyon Peter Chamor. Now Rashi notes over here that in general, when you have an animal that is a redemption for a Peter Chamor, you have a tle like this. So bari surehu. Generally, let's say it would be given to the Kohen. Let's say you would have this tle and it would be given over to the Kohen. It's a Pidyon Peter Chamor. The Kohen would need to include that in his Meiser Behema. Meiser Behema, the way it works is that every single year you're going to give 1/10 of your animal as Meiser Behema, and that would apply by Pidyon Peter Chamor as well. And Yesh L'Kohen Yud Pitre Chamor. Let's say, for example, a Kohen has 10 Peter Chamors. Now it has to be specifically a case shenaflu lo mi beis avi imo Yisrael. Now it fell to him from he inherited it through his mother's side, meaning to say through the father of his mother who was not a Kohen, who was considered to be a Yisrael. So in that situation, if he has those Peter Chamors, the halach is ma'afresh aleim asara siyin. So then he has to separate on those 10 sheep or miasran, and he has to take off meiser ve'hen shalom, and then they belong to him. That would happen in such a situation if he had a case of Pidyon Peter Chamor. That is something that you do need to take meiser off of. Hilkach, therefore, Safek Pidyon Peter Chamor b'yad Yisrael. Let's say you have a doubt of a Pidyon Peter Chamor in the hands of Yisrael, so it's nichnas ladirim shar talayim shalo. That's the same idea. It has to enter the pen with the rest of his sheep. L'sasr, it has to be part of the meiser. V'nafka basiri leipuk, and if it comes out as number 10, so then it comes out as number 10. And we will point out over here that the Mefarshim do note within Rashi that Rashi is specifically talking about a case where the Kohen inherits the Pidyon Peter Chamors, because if it would not be a case of inheritance, let's say he's receiving it as a Kohen, so that's already considered to be like a matana, and there wouldn't be Meister Behema there. For that, you could see the Mefarshim on this Rashi. In any case, Rashi continues, V'sal Kadaitach. Now, if you think Yesh LeKohen Sad Zechia Bo, that the Kohen is considered to possibly be an owner in a situation of a Safek Bechor, if he were to seize it, he would keep it. So Nimtza Zem Yotza Basiri Poter Memono B'Memono Shal Kohen. So then what ends up happening here is, let's say this Yisrael, he takes this Safek Pidyon Peter Chamor, he puts it in with his other animals, and then it's part of the Meiser Behema, and this animal happens to come out number 10, and this is the animal that he's going to give to the Kohen as his Meiser Behema, but he doesn't really own this animal. It really might be the mammon of the Kohen. Again, this is a Safek Pidyon Peter Chamor, so it's a doubt whether it really belongs to the Kohen. If the Kohen were to seize it, he would be allowed to keep it. Now he's going to use this as his Meiser Behema and exempt himself from Meiser Behema with something that might belong to the Kohen, and so therefore it does seem to be a proof that the Kohen is not able to seize this Safek Bechor situation, and therefore it's not considered to be Mammon Shel Kohen. And so the Gemara continues, Amar le Abaya, Abaya said back to him, that's back to Rav Chananya, he said, if it's this brisa that you're bringing about the sveikos nechnasin ledir lesaser, so if that's your proof, lo tesayil lamar, that actually is not a proof to the master. It's not a proof to Rabba. Why? Because hachamay askin. Because here, what are we dealing with? Could go into less le'elatisha. The case over here is when he takes this Safek Peter Chamor and he enters it into the pen to be part of the Meiser Behema, he only has 9 other animals, and so therefore miman of shach, it's not a problem, because if this animal is not considered to be part of the Meiser Behema, he only has 9 animals. He's not obligated in Meiser Behema anyhow. And if this animal is not a Bechor and actually is considered to be the mammon of his mammon and not the mammon of the Kohen, and it is part of his Meiser Behema, so then it's not a problem for him to give this animal as animal number 10 as the Meiser Behema. As Rashi says, Lamar Rabba Shehu Rabba, the master is Rabba because he was the Rebbe of Abaya, and so it means exactly Miman of Shach. Again, we're talking where there are exactly 9 other animals, and the Gemara elaborates, V'hu Daman of Shach, you have essentially here a Miman of Shach. Either way you look at it, it's fine. Ibar Chiyuvahu, if this animal is Bar Chiyuva, meaning to say this person rather, is a Bar Chiyuva with this animal belongs to him, it doesn't go to the Kohen, so Shaper Kamaser, then it's good that it's part of the Meiser Behema. And Ilav Bar Chiyuvahu, now if it's not a Bar Chiyuva over here, meaning this animal really should have been the mammon of the Kohen because it's really a Bechor, so Tisha Lav Bar Yisurin, and so 9 animals is not enough to have Meiser Behema anyhow, and that's why it's effective over here. There's no problem of Poter Mamono Shel Kohen, even if it is possibly the mammon of the Kohen, that would not be a problem. As Rashi explains, Ima bar chiyuvahu, meaning, Ihai gavra bar chiyuvahu, if this person is a bar chiyuv, L'Yisuri, that he has to do Meiser Behema, Shepidyon zel la pidyon Peter Chamor shalo, because this pidyon is not the pidyon Peter Chamor of his, Hare yesh lo yutlaim, so then he actually has 10 sheep, meaning if this actually is not a pidyon Peter Chamor, and it's not an animal that really goes to the Kohen, so he has 10 sheep. V'chayiv la'asr and shaper kam asr, he has to take off Meiser, and it's good what he's doing. And he la bar chiyuvahu, let's say he's not a bar chiyuv, Shepidyon zeh shel Kohen, that this really belongs to the Kohen, so lo pater lo midi, he hasn't exempted himself from anything. The tisha la b'nei Yisrei ninu, because 9 anyway are not chayiv in Meiser Behema, and so that can be the explanation of this brisa. It would not necessarily be a proof to Rabba. But the Gemara then continues, Hadar Amar Abaya, then Abaya said, Lav Milsi Hidi Amri, it's not true what I am saying. I'm trying to answer that this brisa is working Mimon of Shach, and it could really be that it is the moment of the Kohen. That's not really true. Because the truth is, the Sveik Allah Bari Surehi, because if you had a situation of doubt, there would be no situation of Meiser Behema in that case. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Kafatz Echad Min HaMenuya, and this is talking about when you're counting out the animals of Meiser Behema, and one of the ones you've already counted, L'Sochan, it goes back inside the pen. Now everything gets mixed up. So the halach is kul and patur, and the halach over there is that everything becomes exempt. And so what do we see from there? So it says the Gemara, Visal Gadaitach Sveika Bo Yisuri. Now if you thought, if it entered your mind that in situations of doubt you do need to take off Meiser, so la'asr Mimon of Shach, you'd have the same kind of Mimon of Shach Meiser over here. The bar chiyuvahu shaper maser, because if it's bar chiyuv, his Meiser is good. V'la bar chiyuvahu nifter v'minyan haroi, and if it's not a bar chiyuv, so then he becomes exempt with something called minyan haroi. The Yamar Rava, because Rava said, they changed it to Rabba. Rava said, Minyan Haroi poted, that if you have Minyan Haroi, which Rashi will explain, that does exempt someone. And Rashi explains, Lav Milsi Hidi Amri, what I'm saying is not true. Devadai Siyata Hilamar, that actually this brisa is a support for Rabba. Do you have it Sad Zechia LaKohen Bey Misafik? If there was a situation where maybe the Kohen really is the owner, Veshtakach Techol Hani Telaim Safik Chayavim B'Meiser. So now you really have a situation where all of these sheep, there's a suffix whether there's a Chiyah Meiser Behem or not. Safik ain't Chayavim. So there's a suffix, maybe they're Chayav, maybe they're not Chayav. So the halacha actually would be, says Abaye, Misveika lo have it Tzarech L'Surino. If you would have a suffix situation, there would be no obligation to take off Meiser. Abaye's entire argument was premised on the fact that if you have 9 animals and then a suffix of a 10th animal, so then you should take off Meiser Behema Mimon of Shach, and that's really what's happening in this brisa. But now Abaye is saying that's not true. If you would have a suffix situation, there would be no obligation whatsoever in a case of suffix to do any kind of Mimon of Shach or any kind of Chumrah. You wouldn't have to take off Meiser. Like you said before, that you have to take off Meiser Mimon of Shach, that's all not true. The Chal Suffix Chayav Suffix Pater, because now says Abaye, anytime you have a doubt if it's Chayav or Pater in Meiser Behema, La B'nei Suri Ninu, the halach is that you don't take off Meiser Behema, even if you can utilize a Mimon of Shach formulation, you do not bother with that. And the proof is again, because Kafatz Echad Min HaMenuyin, if one of the animals that you already counted jumped back in the pen, meaning the case is as follows. Let's say he's taking off the Meiser for the sheep. He's counting, you count as they exit the pen. And then what? He didn't even reach number 10 yet, and one of them goes back in. The halach is kula and patur, and they're all exempt. Whether those who left the pen, whether those that are still in the pen, even if there's 1,000 of them, everything becomes patur. Sheyatzu patur and minyan haroi. What happens is they're considered minyan haroi, meaning meaning when he was counting the animals, in theory it was fit at that time that you could have finished the count. You could have come to a situation of Meiser Behema. We say in Bechoros, we bring it over here, minyan haroi pota. The halacha is, there's a halacha, minyan haroi, if you're counting out animals and you could have reached a chiyuv of Meiser Behema, at that point you're already potter. And those that are inside, meaning those that you counted are potter, the minyan haroi, and those in the pen are potter, because now you have this one mixed up within the pen. It has to be the ones that go under the person's staff as they're counting out. This one already passed through. You're not going to count it again. Every single animal that's in the pen is a suffix. Maybe it already passed through. So you have a situation of suffix of all those in the pen. You have a situation of minyan haroi for those that were already counted. Now, if you would say that in a situation of doubt where you can do a mimon of shach and solve the situation, you should take off Meiser, that maybe you'll be able to do it properly, so that you can use mimon of shach here. Take off Meiser on the animals within the pen, and you'll have a mimon of shach. Call yud sheyotzin, every 10 that come out, im Meiser shalahen bar chiyuv, v'charoihu kagon shelo yatso so akofetz l'socha and shaper kamasir. If the 10 that you're counting out, the one that's a doubt is not among them, then it's great. V'ilab bar chiyuv, and let's say one of them that's among the 10 that you just counted is the one that came back in. Kagon osan asar sheyatza zel l'socha and ve'in asir shalhan meiser. So their 10th one is not meiser, but that would also be fine because nifteru min ha-meiser, because those ones that come out are going to be pater anyway. But minyan haroi, they're going to come out with minyan haroi. They'll be pater with minyan haroi, meaning shekashamona aleph beis gimel, because when you counted 1, 2, 3 as the animals exited, hayu bedir tzlaim harbe, there were plenty of other sheep inside the pen. Shahayu ru'uyim lahashlam, you could have finished off the count properly. Happens to be that the one that came out was the one that went back in, but you could have finished upochim minyanu. So all of those become pater. So you do have a mimon of shach over there as well. Diyamar Rava bebechoros, because Rava said in bechoros minyan haroi poter, that when you have minyan haroi it exempts. Hayalot yud tloim amon a chamesh umeis echad min she'ein menuyin. Let's say you had 10 sheep and you count out 5, and then one of them dies that's still in the pen. Ha-menuyin patur, and everything you counted is patur. V'she'ein menuyin, and then those that you didn't count yet, mitzarfen l'gor nacher, you'll use them for the next time that you take off ma'aser behema she'yoldu lo tloim, when you have more sheep that are born to the person. Ad she'yagia zman hagor, when it's time to again do the ma'aser behema, v'yitzarfen memelu, you'll join them together. Aval ha-menuyin patur minyan haroi, but anything that was counted is patur through minyan haroi. V'yalef lami asher yaver, you learn it out from the pasuk of asher yaver, v'lo shekvar avar, d'mishavar tachas hashavet, v'lo ola biyadu la'asher shuvein ma'aviro pam acheres. Once you count it out once, even if it didn't happen that it was ma'aser behema, you don't do it again, because sheyoldu lo tzlaim l'tzarif imoim. And so then again, you would be able to use this idea of minyan haroi poter, you'd be able to use them in manav shach, but we don't say that. We say that in situations of doubt, there is no ma'aser behema, and therefore over here as well, in this brisa of asveikos nichnasen ladir le'esaser, the fact that it's nichnasen ladir le'esaser, it cannot be explained through this mimon of shach that Abai explained, and therefore it is a support for Rabba. We will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph.